Whether you're dreaming of a retirement with sand between your toes and a cold one in your hand, hitting the road to chase the winds of adventure, or spending time with your grandchildren, this show is intended to help you get there. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement with your host, Josh Knoll. You've worked too hard throughout your career to spend your retirement worrying. So sit back, kick up your feet, because we've got lots of financial tips and tricks to share to help you get exactly where you want to be. Here's Josh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement. That's right. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to have you. Josh Knoll here, joined by the one and only Michelle Lee Melton.
Hello.
The Bugs Bunny to my Daffy Duck. The Statler to my Waldorf. So, Michelle, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
All right, great. Well, I'm doing well, too. And we are back again here in Coastal College's recording studio, beautiful downtown Fairhope, ready to get after yet another great show, right?
Sure.
Okay. Listeners, Michelle and I are here today to discuss financial topics relevant to those of you in or near retirement, living your best life along our part of the Gulf Coast. Here's what we've got in store for you today. First segment, deep dive on our topic of the day. Second segment, about 20 minutes past the hour, fan favorite, Michelle with the news of the week. Third segment, roughly 40 minutes past the hour, Josh's crystal ball and
big fat mouth.
Big mouth, that's right. So buckle up. We got a lot to get to. Quick background on me for those of you new to the show. Again, my name is Josh Knoll. I'm a fee-based financial advisor. I hold my FINRA Series 65 securities license, and I'm the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. That's an independent investment management and financial planning firm. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. You can find more information on me and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors by visiting our website, gulfcoastfa.com, or feel free to give us a call anytime, 251-327-2124. Now, if you just missed that, do not worry. We repeat our contact info several times throughout this show. Now, on our last episode, we discussed a question that many folks in or near retirement have asked themselves. What should I do with my 401k when I leave or retire from my job? For those of you who'd like to hear what we had to say about 401k rollovers, you can find that episode and all of our previous episodes on the podcast tab of our website. Again, that's gulfcoastfa.com. Today, we're going to ask and attempt to answer another question that many of you in or near retirement may have. But before I ask and answer, a quick question to Michelle.
I'm listening.
Michelle, have you ever thought about having $1 million in the bank?
Yes.
Hey, okay.
It's not enough.
Is $1 million enough to retire on?
Probably. Well, it depends.
Depends how.
It depends on your financial tools. And I guess if you do mindful spending, which I don't want to do, I want to spend more money, not just the same or less.
Well, that's a good segue into our topic. Our topic of the day, and it's a milestone that many strive for, and honestly, more people reach than what the news would have you believe, and that is accumulating $1 million. $1 million in your investment retirement accounts. But as Michelle said, is that enough to retire on? We're even going to discuss strategies for those of you fortunate enough to have $1 million of investments and looking at potentially retiring early, like Michelle would like to do, which I can tell you from personal experience, it is honestly one of the most enjoyable and fun financial planning experiences we have with our clients. So now we're using $1 million. We're going to use some round numbers. We'll get to them here in a minute. You can extrapolate this out, 2 million, 3 million. The sky's the limit. But to help us answer this,
decimal.
There you're right. To help us answer this question, what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the financial planning software that we have at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. And of course, normally I would give this talk like this. I'd have numbers and projections visible on a flat screen TV. So for the sake of our listening radio audience, we're going to just focus on a few of the specific numbers and outcomes so that we don't have a bunch of stuff going around that doesn't make any sense. As you will see, as you'll hear rather, it's not so much hitting a financial goal exactly to the penny. It's more about what type of income and for how long can a bucket of assets such as $1 million produce. So, Michelle.
Yes.
You and I are going to be the avatars for the married couple example I'm about to walk through.
Okay.
All right. So in this example, we're both going to be 60 years old.
Okay.
We're both.
We're not,
but we're both middle-aged. We're not 60 yet. We're going to be interested in retiring early. which I think
Yes.
I find that a little funny because in real life, Michelle would like to retire early, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't ever plan on retiring.
Sometimes, some ways I'm already retired.
I don't want to retire. I'm not sure I could handle the nonstop conversation in my head if I don't have a lot going on. But for the sake of today's episode,
You can get hobbies, Josh. You don't have to be working.
I do. I have hobbies. A lot of them are related to work.
Yeah, because you're going to have money to spend on your hobbies.
This is true. Yes, boats. All right. So for the sake of today's episode and clarity, we're going to name our couple Josh and Michelle.
Okay, easy.
Yep. Again, we'll both be 60 years old, and we will say that both of us, husband and wife, are interested in retiring early. Got it?
Got it.
Okay.
I like it.
All right, so now let's talk details. Now, listeners, there's going to be some assumptions made in our example that are very broad, that may or may not resemble your specific situation. And I think, as you'll see, we'll need to stress test any of these numbers in a comprehensive financial plan. The goal is to give you a retirement planning scenario of someone in their 60s with $1 million of investments and do it in broad strokes. Your specific situation will undoubtedly vary, but that's why we give out our contact info to have an individual conversation with you later. So here's what we know about Josh and Michelle. The avatars, not real life. Both are
Devastatingly attractive.
That's right. Yes, both are 60 years old, and to make things even more they're both going to have $450,000 each in their retirement plan, their 401k plan, plus they're going to have about $40,000 in a joint savings account and $120,000 in a joint after-tax investment account. Some would call it a brokerage account. And if you add those three numbers up, it's a little over $1 million. That's what we're starting with. Okay.
All right.
Now, in our scenario, our assumption, because Josh works in the private sector and Michelle's in the public sector, we're going to have him make just a little bit more income in this scenario. He's going to make $120,000 to Michelle's $95,000. Okay.
All right.
Also in the scenario,
Not fair, but okay. Probably realistic.
Also in the scenario, Josh is still contributing 10% of his annual salary to his 401k, while Michelle is spending her extra on
shoes.
Yes.
Ballet performances.
Reality bleeds over into our scenario.
Yes.
All right. We're going to make their total monthly expenses $8,000 per month. And we're also going to have them contribute a total of $6,000 per year to those joint accounts that I listed earlier. Finally, we're going to base their retirement plan on Josh starting his Social Security at age 70. We're going to make it a nice round number of $3,000 per month. And we're going to have Michelle start her Social Security at age 67 for a round number of $2,000 per month. Okay. So again, we have no visual aids for our listeners. We're just using...
Or me.
Yeah. We're using these round numbers for sake of clarity. All right. So Michelle.
Yes.
What if Josh and Michelle wanted to retire right now, like today, with all those things I just laid out?
Well, being able
$1 million,
to
60
retiring
years
would be
old.
fabulous, but I don't think that's the price point that we could pull it off to do what we want to do.
Well, okay, let's find out what our financial planning software tells us.
Okay, let's do.
If Josh and Michelle were to retire right now, for this exercise, what we're going to start with, we're going to utilize their joint accounts first for their income needs. So if you remember, as we discussed, Michelle and Josh spend $8,000 per month. So their first year income needs are $96,000, 8,000 times 12, okay?
Okay.
Now remember, they have $160,000 in after-tax joint accounts. And for the sake of this argument, for the first year, we're going to assume no interest or little interest.
Okay.
And that simple math is going to tell us that if you take $160,000 minus $96,000 for the first year in income needs, they'll have about $64,000 in their after-tax accounts after the first year of retirement, right?
Okay.
That means that somewhere in year 2, they're going to need to start taking withdrawals from their retirement accounts. Got it?
Okay.
All right. And again, also for sake of brevity, we're going to assume that their retirement accounts are growing by 6% per year. Now, we're going to discuss later how an investor's rate of return is never going to be exactly the same year to year. If anybody promises they can do that, run, don't walk away. That rate of return will go up and down. So to accommodate this 6%, what we'll do is we'll designate it as an average. And again, more importantly, we're going to stress test our assumptions using what's called a Monte Carlo.
Ooh la la, très bien.
Not the car.
Not the place?
Not an El Camino, not a place, not a car. It's a Monte Carlo simulation. We're also going to factor in 3% inflation. Listeners, I understand that inflation's been higher in the past few years, but we're trying to go to historical means on this stuff, okay?
All right.
All right, so now, Josh and Michelle could do basic back of the napkin math. I say basic. You could add 6% interest to the retirement account values. You could deduct the $8,000 per month income needs. You could factor in the 3% inflation, and you could do that with a notepad anyway, and you could come relatively close to how long their money would last, right? But wait.
There's more.
There's more. Michelle and Josh, if they do this math, they're forgetting one hugely important factor.
Uh-oh.
Remember when I said that Josh and Michelle had a combined balance of $900,000 in their 401k plans?
Yes.
So, Michelle, do you remember from our last episode, are 401k contributions pre-tax or after-tax?
Pre-tax.
That's right. And what happens when you make withdrawals in retirement?
Death by 10%.
Well, no, that's early withdrawal penalty.
Dang.
You pay income tax, which is typically a little higher than that. So you pay income taxes on the withdrawals. So, listeners, I know that there are sometimes Roth options in a 401k, but again, for the sake of time, we're keeping our variables very basic, okay? Now, so for us to have an accurate amount of the withdrawals needed to fund Josh and Michelle's $96,000 annual spending lifestyle, we need to factor in taxes, we need to factor in inflation, which means that when they do a withdrawal out of the retirement plan, it's going to need to be higher than the $96,000 that needs to be left over to satisfy the total withdrawal need. Does that make sense? You're going to withdraw a larger amount, pay the taxes out of it, and hopefully keep $96,000.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Okay. Now, when our financial planning software, when we input all of this data, account balances, withdrawals, taxes, inflation, a bunch of other factors, what we are working towards is an income solve, or more specifically, a withdrawal rate, so that we can see if Michelle and Josh's dreams of retiring at the age of 60 with $1 million is realistic, at least mathematically. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in our scenario, Josh and Michelle's withdrawal rate, that for that first year, remember we took $96,000 out of the joint after-tax accounts. If you did the math on that withdrawal rate comes out to 8.5%.
Ouch, that seems a lot.
That's already a red flag. Most financial planners are going to shoot for a 4 to 5% withdrawal rate, and many would even argue for a 3% rate to be safe. The news around this doesn't get any better, too, because as Josh and Michelle, around withdrawal rates, because as Josh and Michelle drain their joint accounts, then start tapping into their retirement accounts, this withdrawal rate continues to grow to a larger percentage because they are taking the same amount of money for income from an ever-decreasing account balance.
Boo.
Okay, why is this? Because a high withdrawal rate is almost always going to be higher than the rate of growth in a conservatively managed portfolio. And if you're in or near retirement, you should at least be moderately conservative, maybe moderate aggressive, depending on some of the other factors at play. But in our scenario, it should be a conservatively managed portfolio. Now, Michelle, our listeners can't see this, but if we project these numbers out, even factoring in Josh's Social Security at age 70, yours or Michelle's at 67. Our financial planning software tells us that Michelle and Josh will run out of money in their late 70s, early 80s at best.
Boo.
And Josh and Michelle both have longevity in their family history, so this is not good. So does that mean that Josh and Michelle have to work until they drop?
Well, Josh wants to, so that's fine.
I do, but remember, these are our avatars, right, that are 60 years old. Fortunately, the answer is no. In fact, what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to demonstrate how a relatively few small changes can have a huge impact on the longevity of your retirement plan. So let's do this, Michelle. Let's add some additional factors.
Okay.
Let's say that Josh and Michelle like their jobs, or they at least tolerate them, and the thought of working a couple more years isn't the worst thing in the world to them. So let's make the change of having them both work now until age 62, 2 more years.
Okay.
We're going to hold all the other assumptions stable. If you make that simple one change, Josh and Michelle would now be projected to have about $650,000 in their investment accounts, not at age 80, but at age 90. That's not bad.
Okay, well.
That's just one simple change.
All right.
$650,000 plus 10 years.
I mean, okay. I don't know if I want to care about having millions of dollars in my bank account at 90.
Well, you might, because here's the thing. We're about to make it even better.
Okay.
What if Josh and Michelle not only decided to continue working at age 62, but they also agreed to work part-time from age 62 to 70? Josh could be a part-time.
What are you going to be?
It's my avatar, and I hear he likes RVs and travel trailers and boats, so he could be a boat salesman.
I want to be an influencer.
And Michelle could be a 70-year-old influencer on TikTok.
With my old clothes and stuff, maybe I could sell them.
Probably so.
Because I've got quite the wardrobe.
I did just a word to the wise. You got to get on TikTok first to start doing some of that.
Oh, blast. It'll be called something else by then.
Yeah, well, that's true. So let's say that in their part-time work, they produce $40,000 of joint income over that 62 to 70 year period. If you add that change, so again, we're working full-time age 62, part-time
We've
62 to 70,
now.
2 changes, right? Guess what their account balance would project to be? Again, these are basic assumptions. There's more factors at play, but in our scenario, guess what their investment account balances would be at age 90, Michelle?
I mean, a lot more.
$2.5 million.
Okay, what are we going to do with that when we're 90, though?
Oh, well, Josh and Michelle will surely find something, probably a bigger boat. Now, I got even a more encouraging scenario.
And a captain.
Yes. There we go. Let me make this even a little sweeter here. Studies have shown where retirees tend to spend the most money in the first part of their retirement.
Yes.
Right? Then eventually, that's not a good thing, but then eventually reduce spending through things such as less travel or large purchases, kind of middle retirement, if you will. And then they tend to ramp up spending again towards the end of retirement, often due to health expenses. It's called the retirement spending smile. I thought you'd like that, Michelle.
I do like that. Is there also the frown?
Well, there could be, but we'll circle back on another episode. But they call it the retirement spending smile because it's shaped like a smile, or at least a flattened out U. Mm-hmm. Our financial planning software that we use has the ability to run a retire smile simulation. And here's the good news: if you retire and you follow the path of most retirees, again, spend more when you first in the first part of retirement. It tends to level
travel.
off.
I got places to go.
And then towards the end, a lot of times with extended health events or end of life care. But if we add that retire smile to our simulation, at the end, at age 90, now instead of having $2.5 million from before, we project out to have $3.7 million in our investment accounts. Not bad, right? Now we're talking legacy.
We're 90.
There you go. It's all right. We'll be 90s the new 70s, what I heard. All right. So as many of you listening you've probably shouted at me a couple times through the radio. Of course, Josh and Michelle can simply choose to just reduce their spending in retirement and live on less. This obviously can happen. But I'm going to tell you, in my experience, people tend to settle in at a certain lifestyle and then not very much from it over the years. When you come in, we're happy to illustrate reduced spending in retirement. And sometimes it happens. It's usually tied to a debt payoff, like a mortgage payoff. But remember, at the end of the day, the goal is to help you achieve the retirement that you dream of, not the one you settle for. So,
boom.
All right, so let's walk through that again. If we retired $1 million, age 60, with $8,000 a month, we will go broke by age 80, right?
Yeah.
But if we make a few changes, work a couple extra years, maybe add some part-time work to it, maybe look at adding a retire smile factor to it, then there's actually a potential of a very nice outcome. So what are your thoughts, Michelle?
Well, I think that, like you said, we need a bigger boat, more real estate, $3.7 million at age 90 in the bank, half that. I don't know.
What it shows, to be fair, what it shows you is the time value, the value of compound interest, right? Of being on the side where you've got your money's working for you, and it's amazing what a chunk of money can do invested properly over a course of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And especially, again, you saw the factors that we added in there, early listeners, when you add in a couple more years of income, or you add in maybe some years of part-time income, or, like we discussed, you find a legitimate way to reduce your spending, it can have a monumental effect on the outcome at the end. And here's the thing, Michelle, I just did it to age 90, putting the avatars to the side. In real life, you and I have relatives that simply just lived forever, right? So we may blow through that thing, possibly.
Well, I do have to go on my world tour.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah,
that's right. Before age 90.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, listeners, for those of you interested in seeing how your financial plan projects in the future, we invite you to reach out to us.
And try not to be killjoys.
No. I mean, the thing is to get to it beforehand.
Right.
Plan.
Plan.
Yeah. It's kind of like having an illness. So the quicker you can get to it, the better the outcome, versus waiting until you're just really, really, really sick, then going to the doctor. So, I can tell you at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, we approach our financial and retirement planning exercises. Our goal is to educate and hopefully enlighten our clients. And the number one thing I can tell you is there's never any pressure to make any quick decisions or do any business with us until you're totally comfortable. You can set up an appointment by calling 251-327-2124, or you can reach us at our website, gulfcoastfa.com. That's Gulf like the Gulf of Mexico. Coast is in the show title. FA is in financialadvisor.com. Now on our site, you can send us a message directly, or up in the upper right-hand corner is a blue button where you can click and get on my calendar for a 15-minute introductory phone call. All of the initial consultations, phone calls, all that stuff, it's free. Let's just see if we can leave you better and we found you before we start talking about any fees and expenses. All right, so folks, coming up next, there's always a lot going on in the world, particularly the world of finance, investments, and money. Every week, Michelle and I scour what she calls the interwebs for helpful financial articles related to our topic of the day, especially articles that we feel pertain to those of you in or near retirement. So join us after the break to hear Michelle and I discuss this week's relevant headlines in our Michelle with the News of the Week segment. Stay tuned. Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own two hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, or growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's GULF like the Gulf of Mexico. Coast, FA is in financialadvisor.com. Welcome back to Coasting in Retirement. Your host, Josh Knoll here. So as we discussed before the break, every week Michelle and I scour the interwebs for helpful financial articles related to our topic of the day, especially articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. Our job is to hopefully help you all understand how these headlines impact you, especially when it comes to your money. So also just a note, we include the article links on our show transcript, which you can find on our website, gulfcoastfa.com, under the podcast tab. The show goes out on Sunday. We put it up on the website on Monday, and you can read and follow the links of everything that we're about to talk about. But with all that said, and without further ado, here's Michelle with the news of the week.
All right, Josh, in our opening segment, we talked about how Josh and Michelle, the avatars, retired at 60, then went bust by age 80. Not in a good way.
Right.
So I thought an article about how to not go bust in retirement would be a good place to start. So the U.S. News and Report article I found seemed to have the broadest advice with their article titled 12 Ways to Ensure You Don't Run Out of Money in Retirement. We're not going to list all 12. As you said, listeners can find the link to this article on your website, but a couple of pieces of advice jibed with what we just discussed, such as working part-time in retirement, maybe, delaying your Social Security if you're able, okay, and the ever-helpful stop spending so much. Not an option. I did notice that this article recommended annuities, ding ding, for income production, plus also mentioned reverse mortgages and long-term care insurance. What did you agree or disagree within this article? Okay, so I think that this article starts out with something I think is super critical to the long-term success of any financial plan, whether you work with an advisor or not, and especially you folks that are leaving employment, particularly the ones that are retiring, is to have a budget. It's not uncommon for folks to underestimate what they actually spend every month, particularly on items such as eating out, or in Michelle's case, shoes. Yeah, I just round up.
You're right. And if your monthly income needs are off by even a few thousand dollars per month, it's going to have a huge consequence on your quality of life in retirement and the longevity of your investments. The budget can be as simple as a spreadsheet or as sophisticated as using software like QuickBooks. But however you do it, having an accurate portrayal of what you actually spend on average every month is really, really important. I personally, for my personal spending, I use an Excel-based program called Tiller. And, Tiller doesn't sponsor a show here. Maybe they should, but I love it. It's only $79 per year, so it's a lot cheaper in QuickBooks. It's spreadsheet based, which just makes my little nerd heart flutter, right? This article recommends having a diversified. It also recommends having a diversified portfolio. The idea that is help you spread out your risk and ensure that you don't have all losers in your investments at the same time. For example, retiring into a down market, and if you've got just all really risky stock positions, and there's a broad-based down market or broad-based recession, that can have a huge, monumental effect on the longevity of your assets. Yeah, it's called, Michelle's heard us talk about it quite a bit. It's called sequence of return risk, and that's usually coupled with what's called drawdown risk. We can discuss that more if you all want to give us a call. Michelle, the article also mentions annuities, specifically income annuities. And we've discussed annuities at length on previous episodes, and I'm sure we'll discuss them again. So, folks, you can look back at our catalog, and we talk about all the different kinds of annuities. We had a previous episode dedicated to long-term care insurance. So instead of explaining all the ins and outs of how that relates to your retirement plan, I'll just briefly give you an example. I recently had a client pass away. She was one of my favorite clients last year, and she had bought an asset-based long-term care policy from me years ago. Unfortunately, she got sick and she actually passed before needing to claim any of the long-term care benefits from her policy. But because she bought an asset-based long-term care policy, she actually left behind a really nice death benefit to her heirs, who she deeply cared about. Asset-based policies, Michelle, basically, in general, how they work is they can be purchased with a lump sum. That lump sum is going to secure a certain amount of death benefit, and that's going to be dependent on your age and health. There's going to be a death benefit there. They also, the lump sum that you pay in, is, again, depending on your age and your health, it's going to have a long-term care component that's going to do what's called a multiple, or it's going to leverage that initial premium. Depending on your age, you could look at a 2 to 3 times multiple on that. So, for example, if you put in $100,000 in asset-based long-term care policy, again, depending on your age and your health, you might have $200,000 to $300,000 worth of long-term care benefits to access. Now, when you pass, if the death benefit is higher than the long-term care claims that were made, and an example I just gave of my client, there were no long-term care claims made, the balance is paid out in a death benefit. So, and then lastly, you mentioned, Michelle, we're not going to dive into too much, but you said the article mentions reverse mortgages. We're going to dive into that more on a later episode because I generally don't recommend them.
I when I read that too, I was like, this is old school, and that never seems to go well.
It's rife with scams.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll tell you what, listeners, we'll put a pin in that. For the next one. All right. Very good. What's next?
Also, a little sidebar there. Alabama is the 4th lowest cost of living state. That just came out. Yeah.
Well, I'll be dang.
There you go. So people that are retiring in Alabama goes farther.
Which is half of the southeast of the United States plus New York.
Yes, exactly. A lot of people coming from California and Tennessee too, apparently.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So next up, a word of wisdom from hair metal icon Kip Winger. Yeah. Just kidding. An actually useful article is from Kiplinger, and it's titled "Which Accounts to Spend Down First in Retirement? 4 Tips." And it's focused on the tax consequences of a retiree's withdrawal plan. The author pushes back on conventional wisdom that retirees should spend down their taxable assets, such as bank and brokerage accounts, first, and then move on to tax-deferred assets, such as 401ks and IRAs, second.
Yeah, and 401ks, they're tax. Sorry, let me interrupt you.
Okay.
Yep.
But so thereby saving their tax-free accounts, such as Roth IRAs, last. I think that the main takeaway is that a financial plan can help retirees see the impact of their withdrawals on their taxes, and according to the author, help them make decisions that can add years to the life of their portfolio. What do you think about it?
Well, okay, so first, we make that silly joke about the terrible 80s hair metal band Winger, and I wonder, our audience is probably old enough that some of them recognize that terrible band.
I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah, and we sing some of it.
I mean, if you're above a certain age, it's the joke's not even that funny, but if you're around our age...
Winger is Canadian, by the way.
It's right, and it's a terrible, and some of these songs have been canceled, rightfully so. All right, so back to the article. They talk about the practice of spending down all of their assets completely before touching your Roth IRA, which, to be fair, in our previous example, that's what we did, again, for sake of brevity. The article also makes a point that if your only income sources are at that point are Social Security and a Roth IRA, there's a chance that, again, if you already spent down all of your after-tax accounts, there's a chance that you'll have negative taxable income. I mean, that sounds good, but what it means is you possibly miss out on personal exemptions and standard deductions. Okay. It also makes the case that people who exhaust their taxable assets completely, they often find themselves trapped in a higher tax bracket after Social Security benefits, and then especially once RMDs, required minimum distributions, kick in. And in fact, if the combined amount is high enough, it also in some cases could trigger higher taxes on items such as capital gains and dividends, Social Security benefits, and in some examples, higher taxes on Medicare Part B and D premiums. And, all that makes sense. Everything they lay out, I get it. And I also agree that this article that investors, particularly those of you entering in retirement, you should definitely look at your asset allocation. That is, what types of investments are you holding in your various retirement accounts? That sometimes there's certain investments that should go into certain accounts depending on what we're trying to accomplish, and that's asset allocation, as opposed to just kind of blindly throwing things in the different buckets that you have. And then I think lastly, it said, that makes the case that sometimes it does make the most sense to tap into your Roth IRA early if you have one. But again, it's all case by case. I see the point of the article. The main point is that there are tax consequences, even if you got enough money. Like in our previous example, if we made a couple changes and we had a larger bucket of money, we could still cost ourselves money if we don't manage it properly, cost it through increased tax bills, right? So does all that sound a little complicated, Michelle?
A little bit. Yeah.
Well, thankfully for you and anyone else looking for this type of help, these are the tasks that we handle in our financial planning process at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, 251-327-2124. What's next?
All right. So, Josh, you walked through a basic financial planning exercise in our opening segment, and I now understand how financial planning software can project the longevity of an investment portfolio. But it got me curious as to see what else a plan can do. I checked in on our good buddy, Chuck Schwab.
Chuck Schwab.
Mm-hmm. And they happen to have an article titled 8 Keys to Good Financial Plans. In addition to the retirement planning we've discussed, Schwab states that a financial plan should also help investors with budgeting, debt management, setting financial goals, and preparing net worth statements, just to name a few. I like the breakdown of the years, too, for short-term.
I did too.
Midterm. Yeah, that made kind of wrap my head around a little better.
Right.
Anyway, all right. So, does the financial plan you offer at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors check all the boxes of Chuck's recommended list?
Well, yes, and
it has estate planning in there.
And I know it. Yeah, that's something that you offer.
Yes.
I would argue it does, and then some. Yeah, it's pretty robust, and I think it makes a great. I had a meeting today, and this week. Pardon, I had a meeting this week, and it makes the financial planning software makes a good companion to my real world experience. I've owned several businesses. I've been either self-employed or contract labor since my mid-20s. There's just been a lot of things I've got some real world experience with. Back to the plan. A good plan should not just help you with investment projections, but it should also help you budget. It should help you manage debt. It should help you learn how important cash flow is, especially in retirement. And a good plan is going to help make sure that your risk management plan is in place and it's adequate. You'll see above the long-term care that we discussed. And I think it's just important, Michelle, your financial plan should be flexible and dynamic enough to deal with life changes. Because as you and I know, and anyone listening to the show knows, even the best laid plans can be knocked off course. Sometimes in the blink of an eye. Our software allows our clients, they can create a client portal. In that client portal, at their discretion, they can sync up their other accounts, such as their bank accounts, their investment accounts, mortgages, loans, college savings plans, all that. So, and what that does, that allows the client portal and the planning software on the side I see, all those numbers are going to stay up to date and in real time. And it gives the client the ability to kind of, see how their entire financial life stitches together all in one spot, right?
Okay.
That way, let's say that you are making a big financial decision. You're thinking about selling a condo. You're thinking about selling some inherited property. You're thinking about buying a vacation home or buying a travel trailer or a big boat like I dream about. Any of these decisions, you can see how that decision impacts your potential financial outcomes. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's great value. And listeners, if you're interested in discussing what it looks like to have a comprehensive financial plan designed for you, give us a call, 251-327-2124, or find us on the website, gulfcoastfa.com. We got time for one more?
Yeah. So back in our opening segment, you had our avatars, Josh and Michelle, delaying Social Security until ages 70 and 67, respectively. I know we discussed this on the show, the benefits of holding off on drawing Social Security as long as possible, but I can see how many people feel it's a gamble to wait. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they're like me and don't think it's going to exist.
That's fair, right? I mean, there's definitely some concerns.
Yes. Or they're concerned that they may pass away before they start Social Security.
Legitimate concern.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully Forbes can answer these concerns with their article titled, "Here's More Evidence in Favor of Delaying Social Security Benefits." This article references a study that claims delaying Social Security benefits to age 70 instead of 62 increases monthly benefits by 77% in inflation adjusted terms. Mm-hmm. Plus, I found it interesting that the actuarial.
I can't hardly say it.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, the data based on actuaries.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. Used to determine Social Security benefits was designed way back in 1983, which I can totally believe.
Right.
Gosh, when we were just little elementary school rugrats.
Yeah, it's probably third grade. You were probably second.
Which makes me even more nervous about Social Security. But anyway, so... for my sanity and for other people's, walk us through a conversation you would have with the client around the timing of Social Security and when to start taking it.
Okay, well, so the first thing to make point out is these conversations are always going to be specific to the individual. There is definitely no one shoe fits all approach when it comes to timing Social Security. That said, in certain situations, there can be a case made for delaying Social Security benefits. In addition to cost of living adjustments that they make, COLA, your Social Security is going to automatically increase every year. The Social Security benefit is going to increase every year you wait until you're age 70. This article also states, and I meant to see what the life expectancy was in 1983. Are we so old? Was it like 52 then or something?
Probably 68 at best.
Or whatever it was. But as this article gets into, people are living longer than ever. So if you project that increased benefit by delaying over the course of your expected lifetime, the difference between the total additional benefits you receive versus what you left on the table by not claiming Social Security earlier can be pretty substantial. Now, if the difference in those two were 5 years or 10 years, different conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, everyone's not in a position to delay Social Security, but for those of you that have other income sources, say you've got a pension, like Michelle does, mm-hmm. you've got retirement accounts, maybe you got rental properties, or maybe you just got cold hard cash, or heck, for those of you planning to work through your 60s and beyond, like my parents did, there may be some justification for delaying Social Security. The best advice I can give to those of you that are in or near retirement are just considering or talking about Social Security planning, the best advice I can give you is find a fee-based or fee-only financial planner like us or someone else, whether it's me or someone else, and ask us to put together a comprehensive financial plan, because Social Security planning goes into that comprehensive financial plan. That's very good. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Well, great job with the headlines as always.
All right.
Yes. Always important piece of information
mm-hmm.
that for those of you in retirement. Now, listeners, again, if you have questions around the topics in our headlines, if you want to talk about your financial plan or definitely for those of you all that are looking at your Social Security decision, why don't you give us a call, 251-327-2124. We can have a conversation on the phone. We can set up an appointment at our office in Fairhope or Orange Beach. And of course, you can always reach us on our website, gulfcoastfa.com. All right, folks, coming up next, Josh's crystal ball and big mouth.
Yeah.
What have been some of my predictions? Have I been right? Was I ever wrong? How wrong was I?
Maybe.
What do I think is going to affect investors in the near future, maybe the distant future? We could talk about all these things and poke a little fun at my big mouth. Stay tuned. Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own two hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, or growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's GULF, like the Gulf of Mexico, Coast, FA as in financialadvisor.com. Welcome back. Your host, Josh Noel here, alongside co-host Michelle. So I am opinionated. I have strong opinions at times. I would say a radio show host that isn't probably wouldn't be very interesting to listen
Very
to.
vanilla.
Right, Michelle? Right. And I'm paid in my profession, financial advisor, offer professional guidance and opinions to my clients. Again, otherwise, what use would I be? Now, sometimes I feel so strongly about something that I talk about it publicly. Not going to hear a whole lot of political or religious talk on here, but you'll hear a lot of skeptical talk about money and investments. And sometimes I'll make predictions, and I feel like I'm usually right. There are times that I swing and miss. So if you want to hear me eat a little crow, let's get at it with Josh's crystal ball and big mouth. What's first, Michelle?
Okay. So on a previous episode of our radio show, we discussed investments for those in or near retirement to ignore. One of those investments was something called meme stocks. That is, stocks that are artificially bumped up in value through a concentrated effort of investors communicating through places like social media, such as Reddit and YouTube. The communication around these stocks usually involves using memes, such as a rocket to the moon. To be honest, I hadn't thought about meme stocks much since we just recently watched the movie Dumb Money.
Right.
And then we followed up with Wall Street, the original Wall
That's
Street.
right.
Just keep
Yeah,
it real.
double whammy.
Yes, right. So Dumb Money is a story around one of the most well-known meme stocks, GameStop. Turns out he really just liked the stock because he was a gamer. But anyway, the movie does a good job showing both sides of the trading activity, but definitely has a soft spot for the retail investors that participated in the frenzy, even ending on a positive note for the main character and other investors, but not all,
Right.
that got out before the stock collapsed. So, did seeing how regular people were able to dramatically increase their wealth through investing in a meme stock soften your stance on said meme stocks?
Well, on the actual meme stock, no, it did not. On the people, they did a great job of humanizing
Yes,
a lot of those
they
people.
did.
I mean, you had a lot of empathy for them.
Right.
And of course, you and I are yelling at it's like we were watching a horror movie and telling them to get out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're yelling at sell. What are you waiting on, dummy?
One of the main characters did not, and she was negative at the end
on
of
her
the-
net worth,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder how, are those numbers, how real world were they based on? But it looks like the guy that actually,
he walked away with 174 million.
Roaring
I think.
Kitty, whatever. It looks
Yeah.
like he walked away doing pretty well.
Yeah.
But remember, this is a great example of a couple different things. One, on a practical side for you folks that are in or near retirement, or just investors in general, but especially those of you that are in or near retirement, the volatility that this meme stock and probably every other meme stock that's come on the scene experienced over that time period would have been, if you had a significant amount of your wealth tied up in stuff like this, my gosh, I mean, talk about not living to Social Security, you would have had a stroke. I mean, this thing was going up and down all over the place, right? Second, I think it's a good point, and this probably comes back to a little bit more of what I'd say ethics to some degree. As we saw in the show, yes, some of the average, everyday retail investors came out pretty good on that. Some of them, when you come out on this type of thing, when you're buying something that's ridiculously overvalued, that means that somebody, when you go to sell it, that means you're selling it to somebody else at a ridiculous overvaluation, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you're kind of preying on the ignorance or the overexcitement of it. It can be a little bit of a zero-sum game. It's not quite exactly like crypto. There, at least GameStop had physical locations, had revenue and all that, right? But it definitely, it's one of those things where it's the, what do you call it when you run around and try to sit on a chair in the music place? What am I trying to spit out here?
Musical chairs?
Musical chairs. Yeah, it was kind of musical chairs. And some of them got out before the others and they did okay. And then, as we saw in the movie, some held on to it. And some of them are probably still holding on to it with hope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there has to be an underlying, there's got to be some type of intrinsic value to make a stock price stick for the long run. So no on meme stocks. But yeah, definitely you saw the humanity around some people that were trying
Sure.
to, and you also, I mean, they did a good job of portraying the guys that played the Wall Street guys. They did a great job of portraying them as total pigs. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the Robin Hood guys being
Robin Hood,
aloof.
that was
and
not
stuff.
a good look.
Yeah,
not
right.
a good look. So, all right, what's next?
Okay, all right. So, as many listeners know, you've been openly critical about cryptocurrencies, especially when it comes to retail investors in or near retirement.
IEC above.
Yes, all the previous episodes. You've also been pretty open that you think that artificial intelligence or AI has both stolen crypto's thunder as a more attractive bet for future growth and opportunities, at least from an investor's perspective. With the recent positive news for crypto in the form of approved ETFs, and surprisingly, FTX announcing that they would pay back their customers in full, coupled with the somewhat bad news for AI in the form of AI-generated phone scams.
And the whole Taylor Swift
thing last
deepfake
week,
AI generated.
very deep fake,
Right.
freaked people out. It's still happening. Anyway.
Yeah, AI has not had a couple good weeks of news.
Right.
Right.
So, in light of all this, does it change what your big mouth has to say about these two technologies, AI and crypto?
Well, okay, so let's for folks, your regular people I don't know if necessarily pay a whole lot of attention to this. It's just in the news a lot. But so let's talk about AI. AI right now is being led by and generated by the largest of the tech firms. So think Microsoft with OpenAI, think Google, and even Tesla, which if you want to call Tesla a tech stock, they're valued as if they were a tech stock and not a car producer. But
Or a company that puts chips in people's brains. Or
that's
whatever,
right. Yeah, that
whatever
too.
happened.
So
Yeah.
the AI and these large tech firms is truly the opposite of crypto, which is primarily composed of smaller groups or companies trying to find a reason for a niche technology to be adopted by the masses. I think that's a fair statement. I don't think it's overly critical. We'll get critical later.
Yeah.
AI, by definition, is a centralized system. What I mean by that, you got to go to Google to access Bard. You got to go
To do your chat, but to do the chatbot stuff.
right. You
or
got. I
whatever,
mean,
okay.
it has its own thing, but when
you've
you're
gotta
dealing
make
with
that
Bard, you're
decision to do
dealing
it.
with Google. Like technically, you're dealing with Alphabet.
Yeah.
So, and then on the opposite side, crypto is supposed to be decentralized. Although I think I would argue that a lot of people are learning this isn't exactly what it's cracked up to be. And I could be wrong on this, Crypto Bro. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe AI, artificial intelligence, can run on the blockchain, which is the underlying technology of crypto.
Right.
So let me say this as it relates to crypto. Sometimes both arguments for and against crypto can be true. Crypto and the underlying technology could work its way into mass adoption, and it could be a gigantic waste of time for investors. Both things
All
could be
right.
true.
I buy that.
Blockchain, you can dress it up as much as you want, but it's basically a fancy database.
Okay.
And so let me give you this example, Michelle.
Are we back? Okay.
We're going to Nerdville. Did you know that in the 1980s?
Are we going back in the 80s?
We are.
Rewind.
Again,
Okay.
in the 80s, there was a technology developed that could handle complex calculations. It could serve as a relatively sophisticated database, at least during its time, and it revolutionized people's ability to gather, track, and conduct financial business. Do you know what it was called?
No.
It was called Lotus.
Lotus.
Or more specifically, Lotus 123.
Okay.
Is Lotus spreadsheet. And I'm sure that in its time, it probably made its parents' company and its investors a good chunk of money, at least in the early years. But all it took was Microsoft to come in to develop
Borrow.
its own spreadsheet eventually called Excel.
Oh.
And what happened is eventually it drove Lotus 123 into being completely irrelevant. So how's that relate to what I'm talking about with crypto? If you had put all your money into Lotus in 1980, how happy, and remember, Excel came on the scene in the mid-'80s. It didn't take very long.
Oh, okay. I was wondering.
It didn't take long for Microsoft to see that Lotus had something figured out. If you put all of your money, or a big chunk of your money, into Lotus, again, a game-changing database technology, how happy would you be in 1990?
I'd probably be all right happy. I mean, if it's already tanked like halfway through.
2000, they quit.
Because there could be some, curmudgeons like myself or that don't want to change technology.
You and the people still hanging on their, doing their cable like you did forever.
Yes.
Yes. So you might have kept it alive for a while.
I still have checkbooks.
But it went away about 10 years ago, and it was on life support at that point.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if you had done all this 10 years, 15 years later, you wouldn't be happy at all. In fact, you'd be broke if you put most of your wealth into it. So here's my point. Maybe blockchain is the next Lotus 123, and maybe it will change the world, or maybe it will fade out, or maybe it will be replaced by better technology, something like AI.
Okay.
Got it?
Got it.
Good. All right. We got time for one more?
Yeah, I think so. Anyone that knows you well knows that you have, let's call it, an aversion to flying an aircraft.
Yeah, this obviously has nothing to do with investments.
Clearly,
right?
Does it? I don't know.
Get to know
you got
your
Boeing
host.
in here, so okay. I've heard you state on more than one occasion that someone that ran all types of equipment and machinery in your younger years, the one consistent thing is that machines tend to break, and that an airplane is no different than the other machine.
Correct.
It's got a lot of checks that go into
Doesn't
it.
matter.
Okay. So with all the bad news around Boeing's MAX 737 airplane, from the tragedy of 2 crashes that killed hundreds to actual pieces of the aircraft falling off, which was very frightening. One door shuts and another one opens.
Flight.
Yes. In flight. All that happening in flight. Not ideal. Just a few weeks ago, what are you going to do? You're just going to go all John Madden and take a bus while you travel long distances? And we did see a real actual Greyhound on I-65 this past weekend.
Well, so John Madden was a very prominent. He was a NFL coach.
People know who he is.
I mean,
he's still alive, isn't he?
No, he passed.
Oh,
but you didn't know he had a fear of flying, and
I did not.
He started. So he first started. This is completely nothing to do with money. Dolly Parton rented him or let him have her tour bus.
Dolly did.
Dolly Parton.
Way to go, Dolly.
Because she'd heard that he was terrified of flying. He loved it so much that he ended up eventually struck a deal with Greyhound, who supplied him a luxury bus and a driver for free in return for him advertising them. Right?
Okay.
So in between the games, instead of flying from city to city for Monday Night Football, he would drive his bus.
When he was a commentator. He still was forced to do it as a coach with the team and whatnot.
Right, previous to that, right. And I guess, what little I can remember about those years, but I think a team he had been on previously...
Cal Poly.
Had a bad plane crash, killed a lot of his friends.
Killed half the people on board, a lot of which he
So back to my fear of flying. So, yeah.
You and Aretha Franklin in John Madden.
Yeah,
Aretha Franklin, she was driven everywhere. She didn't like flying.
Man, listen, if I could... And Madden had a great point. He got to go all these towns on his travels. He would just pop into diners.
With tofurkeys.
He would pop into like
Todurkeys or whatever he did.
People would be having a softball game and John Madden would be sitting in the stands, in Wappapella, Missouri kind of areas kind of thing. So I would love that. Yes, Michelle's right. I do have fear of flying. I think it is centered around, one, I'm from the country. Country people don't fly much, especially when we're young. We just don't.
The flying machines.
2, I ran a whole bunch of heavy equipment. I worked with a lot of machinery. And the one thing, like Michelle said, it had in common is stuff breaks. Machines break. And I think my point has been made because a piece of an aircraft fell off of the aircraft in flight.
Well, I mean, doors opened and closed too.
I know. Thank God everybody was buckled up. So, well, listeners, obviously it has nothing to do with investments, but this is my big mouth, and my big mouth is right.
I mean, it kind of does. Maybe not invest into certain areas.
Boeing's getting smoked.
Right.
Now, you know what? I'm glad you said that, Michelle. We'll end the segment with this. This is, it's a terrible tragedy, especially with the people that died, and I'm sure the people that had the part fly off are going to be like me, and they're going to just take a Greyhound everywhere. But this has got to be a huge win for Airbus.
Airbus, which is here.
Yeah, which is in Mobile. I bet. I know they're not. That'd be kind of dancing on the on the grave, so to speak. But I'm assuming because what Airbus has done is just proved that it's competent.
Yeah.
Compared to Boeing, and we'll talk more about Boeing some other time. It's not. I want to make sure of anybody that's listening that works for Boeing. We don't. I think any fair person would not necessarily hold the workers accountable. What they did is they had a change in leadership that went just really too hard after profits and getting planes out the door. And when you're talking about something as sophisticated as an airplane, you can't do that. So, all right, very good. Is that it?
That is all this week.
Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed a peek behind the curtain on how I form my opinions and predictions. And more importantly, that I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong, which I'm not wrong on flying. Now, to our listeners that have more questions about the various investments and topics that we discussed in this segment, particularly those of you all that are looking for financial planning assistance or considering trying to work out when to claim your Social Security, we invite you to reach out to us. Call anytime. 251-327-2124 or find us on our website, gulfcoastfa.com. Gulf like the Gulf of Mexico, coast like the show title, FA is in financialadvisor.com. Well, folks, that's here for us this week at Coastal Retirement. I want to give a huge thank you to my lovely co-host, Michelle Lee Melton.
Yay, that's me.
That's right. Thank you to our awesome radio station, FM Talk 106.5 out of Mobile. Many thanks to the provider of our show music. That's local band Sloth Racer. Many thanks and kudos to our awesome editor and producer of the show, Chazare Gray. And as always, my sincere appreciation for all of you out there that have been listening and joining us on this journey. We would love to be part of your financial journey as well. Till we talk again next Sunday, Have a wonderful and productive week. This has been Coasting in Retirement with Josh Knoll.
Advisory services offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, 6201 College Boulevard, 7th floor, Overland Park, Kansas, 66211. Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, doing business as Prime Capital Wealth Management and Qualified Plan Advisors, and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors are not affiliated. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, Prime Capital Investment Advisors, Prime Capital Wealth Management, and Qualified Plan Advisors do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. This content has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, or accounting advice. The information provided herein is not a complete analysis of every material fact regarding any strategy. It is intended only to provide insight into the opinions of the author. All information presented is for educational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Content offers commentary and generalized research, not personalized investment advice, and is for informational purposes only and does not constitute a complete description of our investment services or performance. All investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified legal professional and/or tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here.